I'm Matt Martelli. This is the Off-Road Racer Podcast, and I'm here with a good longtime friend, Mike Deutsch, a.k.a. Otto. What's up, man?
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Good, man. Good. Glad to have you down.
Yeah, you guys must be getting low on candidates to do a podcast. I'm sorry for that, but I'm happy to be here. It's definitely a feather in my cap, and probably not so much in yours. Nobody's ever heard of us or me, so.
Well, it's not really true. I mean, you're known for being the good time guy at all the events that you guys do with Biltwell.
Yeah, you've probably heard of Biltwell, some of us.
Yeah,
some people. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, we were just hanging out at lunch, and you guys just completed your off-road race, the Biltwell 100. How'd that go, and how'd that come about? Because it's fascinating to me that you guys, you're on-road chopper guys, right? Bike guys, and that progressed into an off-road race.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact story, but I know racing the Mint 400 sparked us a little bit, I think, and racing the Nora on a Sportster kind of gave us the bug a little bit, and I think that probably got Bill looking around at what the offerings are for. Excuse me, our guys are middle of the road kooks. You know what I mean? They're not newbies maybe, and they're not pro District 37 guys. Or hardcore chopper guys. They're somewhere in the middle. They're working class and just trying to have fun on the weekend guys. And so I think Bill probably started poking around and seeing that there's a little opportunity. I know what it was actually. Yeah, the opportunity is what he noticed, but. Yeah, because we are kooks, we love Honda XRs.
Right.
Okay. So for a long time there, Bill and myself and some more of our friends, we live on the XRs Only website, up in Hesperia is XRs Only.
Right.
Al Baker's. So Al Baker was a racer, an old guy that just did all these parts for air-cooled Hondas. We like air-cooled Hondas. They're bulletproof. They're not fast. You ain't going to win any races probably, but you're going to finish every race.
Yeah, reliable.
They're just reliable tractors. So Bill was buying some parts for one of his bikes. We both had a lot of. He got me started on XR 400s, and then he had a 650L, and now I probably had 20 XR 400s and a bunch of other ones. Anyway, he was buying some parts off Al Baker's XRs Only, and one of the guys sent him he saw Bill's email. Bill at Biltwell Inc. You guys should spam him. He saw his email, said, "Are you the Biltwell guys?" And Bill said, Yeah. And he said, "Well, I run a lot of races up here in Ridgecrest." And he's like, "I run sweep, and he's like, if we do any kind of motorcycle race, the last kooks coming off the course are wearing Biltwell helmets. Every single freaking time are these freaking kooks wearing your helmets,
Right.
know?" And he told Bill, "You guys should do your own race because I'm tired of cleaning up after these guys, and so Bill and I went up and met that guy's name was Tommy from DP4 Productions. He does a lot of side-by-side races up there. Yeah. And Tommy said, so we went up and had tacos with Tommy up in beautiful Hesperia. And he said, "Man, I do some desert races. Like I got the BLM bat line, I know some spots. I know how to mark track, And so we took him up on that. And I forget how many racers we had the first year, 200 or 300, but we sold out. And then I forget how many races we had the second year, 200, 300 or 400, and we sold out, And then, anyway, this year was year 5, and we expanded to 2 days. And we sold 800 tickets. So we had 800 tickets sold.
800 entries. Yeah.
800 entries. We had probably 650 guys show up to race over 2 days. So 3 or 3.5, 3 or 350 that first day, and 300 that second day, I think is how it went down. And so we got all these kooks. We lined them up in the desert. We call it the Biltwell 100. It's a 25-mile loop, and so we scale it per your class. A lot of guys, if they're on modern bikes, they're doing 100 miles. If they're on, some of these guys are out there on Harley Davidsons from the teens, 1919 and stuff like that, and they're out there.
Rad.
Yeah, and they're doing a 25-mile loop. So depending on what you're racing, you're going to scale from there. But it's the Biltwell 100. We tell people. For years we've been doing our events, and it's a lot of the same schedule. Show up on Friday, party a little bit, do the thing on Saturday, party a lot, and go home Sunday. Because it seems like, again, our guys are middle of the road guys. They got to go back to work, and that schedule seems to work pretty well. And this was our first year doing the 2-day thing, and I was a little worried there was going to be a ghost town after Sunday's race, and man, it was pretty quiet. And then it got to be the awards time, and people came with their little chairs and sat up in front of the stage, and we had a proper awards ceremony. Both Saturday's always packed, and Sunday now too was really good. So I think our race is popular because it's more entry level stuff, and it's more fun. It's the kind of race where you bring your wife, your girlfriend, hopefully not at the same time, your dog, your camper, your pit bike, and your barbecue. And so the racing just kind of the cherry on top. It's hanging out with your buddies and bench racing and doing a lot of other BS.
Yeah, it's a good time. I mean, that's one thing I like about really all the events, whether it's Diablo Run or, some of the Kern Valley Camp Out or some of the other events that you guys do, that it's fun first, and then there's some competition there sometimes. And, with the Biltwell 100, it's weird because, we started seeing a couple guys come and race with us on totally inappropriate vehicles, and then eventually Harleys, and it was like, well, that's what you have. And that's really the old school spirit of off-road racing. It wasn't, in the beginning, it wasn't like, man, you got to spend $15,000 on a bike and you got to do all this stuff. I remember, growing up in El Cajon, and there was a guy a couple blocks away who was, the bike guy, and you would go to him and you'd give him whatever money you had and saved up, and he would go, okay, you have $250. You can get that one, and you didn't get to decide what bike you got. In fact, it's a funny story. I remember I'd saved up some money, and, he pointed me to this bike, which was one of the old school combat wombats. You remember those bikes?
Yeah.
Right? But I was a kid. I'm like, that doesn't have plastic on it. I don't want this thing. I want this, this beat up Honda or whatever it was that I decided on. And I was like, nah, I'll take this. Right. And he's like, no, kid, this is what you want. This will last forever, blah, blah. But to me, it wasn't cool. So I made a huge mistake right there. I think that bike would be worth $20,000 now, but
yeah. Well, hindsight's 20/20.
Right.
Yeah. You never know. I mean, trophy trucks and, big races like what you got going on. Obviously the fast guys are what attracts a lot of people, but, it's the garage builder still that's exciting. The class 11s or, all the other stuff that's kind of home built that's more approachable for most people. I grew up going to the drag races with my dad, and it was in the 80s. And so actually they were pretty fast at that point still. But man, Bob Glidden would be out there working on his own car. His wife would make him a sandwich. He'd eat it while he was, swapping heads, and then he'd go out and race, and then he'd drive his rig home, And so now drag racing is, wind tunnels and computers that launch the cars, and you got women out there doing their thing, and they're fast, man. They're fast too, but it just kind of changed a bunch. But off-roading, there's still that opportunity for a guy to put together a car in his garage, buy something, a wrecked bug, rolled whatever, and put a cage in it and get it out there and see what he can do. And you guys have kept that spirit alive with with all the crazy classes you got, and by letting the Harley guys in there, the Harley bikes now, the hooligans, man, they're proper race bikes.
Yeah.
5 years ago, that was not the case. It was just like drag racing, early drag racing in the 40s and 50s and 60s, when dudes were throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Early drag racing, one dude said, hey, we should put the motor in the back. It's kind of dangerous to have it in the front. We'll see how fast it'll go, And, the hooligan, same thing. Hey, we could bolt a Honda front end to this. It'll be much better than a Harley one. Well, yeah, of course it will be, but it's still not proper, not sprung, for that weight, So it was better, but it wasn't dialed. And now, man, there's custom wound springs and extended swing arms that are beefed up and mid controls that guys are making. And this year, the hooligan class, I think it was the hooligan pro class, so like the fastest guys on Sportsters, a dude showed up. He was probably your age. Man, he cleaned all the young kids' clocks, man, and his bike was it was a race bike, Right. It was a race Harley, It wasn't some cobbled together hunk of junk where the last 4 or 5 years, that's what they've been. They're moving, again, towards pretty dialed bikes, but this guy's bike was dialed, and this old man, not old, but older, man, he was dialed in. You know, you're more of a desert racer than I am, but the fastest guys in the desert are dudes that are 40, 50, 60 years old. You know, you go ride with some of these guys out in the desert, you don't see them all day, take off their helmet. You don't know how old they are. They're out, they ride like they're 18, you know, and then they take off their helmet and the dude's 65, you know, and he rips, you know, but it's because he's got all that desert knowledge and experience.
Racecraft.
You know, he can read the desert. He knows the dirt's about to change. He knows that we're about to move into a rocky section. He knows I better let off the gas, you know. And that stuff just takes years and years to learn. And this guy showed up and he had a little bit of that knowledge because I think he raced the year before. I think he had raced the 450 class and did pretty good. So it's like obvious he grew up in the desert. And then he started looking at everyone's bikes and saying, you know, we can make this better. We can make this better. We can make this better. And he did it and he showed up and he ate all those kids' lunch. You know?
That's pretty cool. I just like the idea of just taking something that's just junk and modifying it and you know, and going racing with it. I think it's cool.
It is cool. Man, there ain't nothing that's a bigger piece of junk than a Harley-Davidson Sportster. You know, they give those things away. That being said, they're bulletproof, air-cooled motorcycle, just like the Hondas that we started talking about earlier in the podcast, and there's not a lot to them. So if there's a good Harley that's good for the desert, it's going to be a Sportster. You know, a unit construction, one case, doesn't have a divorce transmission. It's tight and right for racing. And those kids the bikes now out there they're race machines. It's pretty cool. And those kids figured it all out on themselves. You know what I mean? There's no rule book. We don't have a rule book. You know, if something showed up and it had a Ducati motor or something in it, which there's been some kind of iterations of that. We say at some point, we got to make a different class for that. Right. We need to have, you know, knives at knife fights and guns at gun fights and kind of keep the playing field even. And you guys have done that. We've tried to do it with ours every year. Our classes, someone will kind of, you know, I like to think they're not cheating on purpose, but you know, they'll end up in the wrong class and they'll win or something. Say, man, you should be over here, you know, and shame on us for not teaching them that or telling them that. But we're learning too. You know, it's only our 5th year putting on a race. You guys have been putting on races for a long time, and we're learning that as our race grows in popularity, we have to police that a little bit better. So we're trying to do that.
Yeah, it's changing. I mean, that's the funny thing about it is like we ran into it, you know, with those classes where Indian shows up and I'm like, that's a dual sport bike. That's not a Harley derivative, or, you know what I mean? Like that is not equal to what all these guys are racing. And you've seen that too in hooligan racing on the pavement stuff where, you know, it started with a bunch of, you know, dudes, you know, who wanted to drink beer and race each other. And it was super fun. And it had a lot of that punk rock ethos and DIY and it was cool in the beginning, and then boom, a factory gets involved and all of a sudden you're racing against a guy who pulls up in a semi and he's doing pavement racing professionally, you know what I mean? And so I watched that happen and it kind of killed the participation, you know? And so you know, we were talking to Rusty Butcher and a couple other guys, and we're like, "Come over, race with us, man. We'll keep it under control," because we've already got the top guys racing at a high level with purpose built bikes, right? This is more about like let the shit kids come and battle it out. Yeah,
and they've been doing it. Your race have been, I think, instrumental in kicking off a bunch of other racers and helping those guys dial in their bikes. You know, we raced the Nora on a Sportster a few years ago, and then we built another bike. And I had pitted for some people at your race, and we put Christian from our warehouse, who's a really competent rider. He grew up in TJ. He's been racing his whole life, and we put Christian out there on our bike. And I had pitted out there, and I told him, "Man, I go, the stuff I've seen, it looks pretty easy, dude. Like you don't worry about it, you know." And then he went out there, and he had a GoPro on. And he's like, "You lied to me, man. There's some terrible hill climbs that are so hard, you know, and there was a whole bunch of rocks and falling over." And then he's like, "Then the silt was way longer than you said, you know." And I said, "Yeah, I was wrong, you know, but those challenging areas and challenging things is what forced guys to get their bikes right.
Yeah.
You know? Because if not, they're not going to be able to handle that." And we went out to your race and we burned out 2 clutches real quick and just, you know, didn't have things quite dialed in and had a mechanical and had to tap out. So,
well, I remember that year, and, you know, we were so excited about having bikes that we made some mistakes, right? Because we were like, oh, it's got to be all single track. And, we were listening to the guys who were giving us input, who are very good high level riders. And what we have to remember is like the race is for everybody. Like we want it to be difficult, so that when you get to the finish line, you're like, hey man, that kicked my ass, but not to the point where it's like some, weird or not, I shouldn't say weird, but it's not enduro cross, right? It's not climb a mountain, full of rocks or a hill climb or anything like that. It's a desert race. And yeah, there should be some climbs and, but it needs to be something that everybody can finish, right?
Yeah.
So I think there was a couple years where it took us some time to refine the course, and now I think we have it. It's still a challenging course, but it's not brutal like that those first couple of years.
Yeah. And I went to a few of those, and it was definitely brutal, and the timing wasn't like, there wasn't really quite enough time for a lot of guys to finish. So some of those guys were getting timed out, and so. Which
I hate, man. I hate doing that to anybody.
Yeah. So it just took some dialing in. And not listening to the pro guys as much, because hooligan, and I'm not a hooligan racer. I've done some racing on those bikes, but I'm not a pro or anything. But it's a different discipline, and you can put it's just different. You can put a guy that's really good on a 450, and hey, get on that hooligan. Let me see what you got. He's going to have a problem, man. It's not going to be as easy as he thinks. It's a totally different thing. So I got a lot of respect for those kids now that are out there jamming. One, because they're not afraid and they have a little bit of experience. And then two, they built the bike. They can handle it, because even an air-cooled Harley that is, supposedly a little more tough is still a cantankerous contraption, if you will, that's not meant to be out there. Harleys are not known for their reliability, no matter what. They're good at making your wiener bigger, but they're not the most reliable, trouble-free motorcycle. And better than I do, which is that you put anything out in the desert for an extended amount of time, you're going to find its weak spot quickly. You're going to do it. It might be the rider, first thing to go. Second thing might be the motor or suspension or how many races have been lost because of flat tire.
Yep.
So those guys have figured out a lot of that stuff with the Moose or, real suspension now. They got super dialed in suspension, which I know helps a ton. And learning to keep the bikes, reliable. For us, we raced the Nora. That meant just a stock 883, which is a smaller CC, smaller displacement Harley. We just knew we didn't want to have. We didn't want the bike to be the weak link.
Yeah.
So we knew we weren't going to win any race. We weren't going to win our class. I think we were in some 450 class, so we knew there was no chance of winning, but we just wanted to finish. If we finished, we could make our point, and most importantly, knew we wouldn't have to go do it again. So that's what we did.
Well, what was that like racing Nora? Because was that the year was 1,400 miles, or was it?
It was about 1,300 miles. It was 2018.
Yeah.
And man, it was super. For me, it was very nerve wracking. I rode just 2 days. I rode in the morning, and then my partner Chris Moeller from S&M Bicycles, he rode in the afternoon. So Chris is a ringer, and I'm a kook. So it was. I probably wasn't going to kill the bike, but nobody knew if I would time out every day, And I didn't time out, but I got Chris the bike, and then Bill's, he's a decent rider, and Westy, our product development guy, they rode the other 3 days, and we finished the thing. I don't have any experience desert racing at that point. I didn't, so I'm making the pit books, off Google Earth and doing the best I could on all that, and putting together all that stuff for our team, and we did okay actually, and we didn't miss a pit, and we didn't have any mechanicals, and we had a really good our little mechanic buddy Rob. Shout out Rob Rouser. He's from Panama. He built a bulletproof bike. One day I think we have a little chain tensioner and it got loose, but it didn't fall off. And other than that, we didn't have one single problem. Every single night he would stay up, as long as it took him to go through every nut and bolt on the bike and make sure we're set on kill for the next morning. And we did things like 2 redundant batteries, redundant coils. Those are notorious weak links in Harley Davidsons. You can't put a redundant stator that's what makes the power for the bike. But if we could, we would have, you know what I mean? Because those are the other things that go bad on a Harley. So we did our best to, you know, kind of hedge our bets and all that stuff and make sure that we could finish and not time out every day. Because like your race, same thing, man. You know, you can time out real easy on the Nora, even though it's, you know, it's kind of a chiller race. It's not like the 1000 where it's drop the flag and go. We'll see you at the bottom. You know, it's a point to point thing. So, it's a little chiller. You know where you're going to be sleeping that night. You know that you will be sleeping that night. You know, but there's still a lot of things that could go wrong. You can be the most prepared racer in the world, you know, and still not finish the race.
Yeah.
You know, there's a long list of guys. I don't need to name names, but there's a long list of guys that thought they're going to go show Baja how it's done, and Baja going to Baja. You know,
100%.
So get cocky and see how long you last in Baja. You know that it's.
So when you went and did Nora, you had no off-road race experience?
Yeah, not really. Yeah.
And they're like,
ridden dirt bikes.
And so then you're like, cool, we're going to do it on a Harley.
Yeah.
And they're like, not only are you going to do it on a Harley, but you're doing it. What day did you do, or which days did you do?
I did San Felipe to, I think, Constitution.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a rough section.
That's a fucked section.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to San Felipe?
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of the sand whoops?
A little bit, yeah.
Dude, do them on a 500-pound bike.
Dude, there's no way.
Miles and miles and miles and miles. And then they're like, well, it's okay because then you're going to get on the road to Portositas. Well, have you ever been on the road to Portositas?
Yes.
It's arguably worse than the sand whoops.
There's potholes that will swallow cars.
You know, and then you cross over, and I think I don't know if it's Matomi wash, but it's a Matomi-like wash where the sand is just this deep.
Yeah.
You know, and it's miles and miles and miles and miles of that. And then it's sandy W's for miles and miles and miles and miles till you hit the highway again.
That whole side of the peninsula really sucks for bikes because of the sand. Because I was talking about it in the previous podcast of like, you're going over a whoop. The top of the whoop is packed in. The bottom of the whoop is usually like about a foot of sand, right?
Yeah.
So you have to maintain a certain level of speed or you're just going to swap.
Yeah. And on the Sportster, you know, at least for me, man, it's like a wheelbarrow with no wheel. You know, you're just kind of going where the bike goes. You know, you're kind of along for the ride. You're not guiding it too much. You know, so you're all over. You're definitely not putting the front wheel over the backside of a whoop. Not once. You know, so there was a whole bunch of that, and it's a tough bike to ride, and because it isn't the most man, you could wad up a 450 all day. And that thing's probably still going to run, you know, if you haven't broken the collarbone. Yeah. You know, but the Harley, man, you got a couple get-offs, and then that thing's probably toast. You know, so, yeah, we did that, and that was a tough section, and I had the shortest sections out of everybody, and then I did...
But still, your short section was, what, 200 miles?
No, I think that one was maybe 100 miles.
Okay.
You know, it was a long 100 miles.
Still, yeah, it's through that. There are sections down there, especially on that race where it's a lot of graded road, but it's deceptive because you get this sense of safety on the graded road, and there's still big gotchas, and there's still big like, you know, oh, if you step off here, that's a giant hole with rebar pointing at you, or, you know, just crazy stuff like that. Yeah,
Baja, it's not. Again, the craziest part of Baja is the paved roads.
Yeah.
You know, where you think, okay, it's a transit section. I'll just sit on my seat and put on a podcast.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works, man. You better be on your toes more than ever. And you start slipping and you start slacking. And before you know it, you're in one of those potholes. It's as big as a VW. And so, yeah, that was a trying section. And then the next time I rode was crossing over at Loretto.
Okay.
You know, and so... going through the riverbed, that was super tough. And then after that, it wasn't bad. Little transit highway through Mission San Javier, and then the road, you know, that was pretty good. Wasn't too bad. And then pop out in Insurgentes or whatever. I think
Insurgentes, yeah,
and ride a little bit of street right there, and then hand the bike off to Moeller.
Oh, they put you guys on the street there?
Yeah,
yeah. Because usually at Insurgentes, we go to the beach, and it's just like literally like miles and miles of sand whoops.
Dude, we just tried to ride adventure bikes to the beach where you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it was miles and miles and miles of sand whoops.
Yeah.
And one of my buddies got a concussion, and we were in the middle of nowhere, and it was pretty hot, and we had to pack up and punt, you know, and head back to the road because it's gnarly out there, you know.
Yeah.
And it's a hot time of year. It can be a hot time of year.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what we had to do. So, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. We got to skip that, fortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole area along the beach between Insurgentes and Constitution, you know, there's a few spots where it's like, oh, there's a nice little road because there's a ranch, or they're doing some sort of aqua farming or aquaculture or whatever. And, you know, they've packed it down, and you get all happy for a second, then you just go back into like sand whoops. I'm really glad that I have never done that on a bike. I've always done it on a 4-wheel vehicle. So, but, you know, what's it been like for you? I mean, you've had this whole journey with Biltwell and just being a motorcycle enthusiast where, you know, you've done all this stuff with, you know, different choppers and stuff like that. And then, you know, a lot lately, you know, as we were talking with adventure bikes, which you kind of go everywhere with.
Yeah, you have mild to wild. You know, when you're on a chopper, you don't really have much to work with. It's pretty bare bones, and you can make some miles too, you know, and then riding a chopper will make you appreciate an adventure bike when you can bring way too much stuff, you know, which is typically the case with me. You know, we just did a little Baja trip to Cabo and back, and yeah, you find out real quick, this is too much stuff, you know, and so
yeah,
you start by about San Felipe, you start calling buddies that live there and say, can I leave this at your house? You know, it costs a lot of money, but I don't want to throw it away, but I definitely don't want to ride with it, you know, and so we've done that a couple times now where I think next trip we probably won't bring any camping gear. We'll just Airbnb it and ride all the good stuff we want to ride, and then not bother bringing an extra 10 or 15 pounds of stuff you don't need.
Yeah, or you have Chase. That's the ultimate way to do it, right?
Chase would be nice. Yeah, I think actually next time that's what we'd like to do is bring 450s and have a little Chase rig and just do some of that too, so we can get to some of the spots like that sandy stuff, you know, and not be so stressed out about it, and just have someone pick us up at the end and drive us to the Airbnb. But yeah, ride. I like riding all motorcycles. The choppers make you appreciate again the luxury adventure bikes, you know, and the new Harleys, you know, got heated hand grips and cruise control, and that stuff's nice too. And it's nice to be able to pick your weapon for whatever you decide to do. Bill, my boss, he's made us or had us ride a lot of bikes, appropriate or inappropriate, all over the world. We did Alaska a couple of years ago. Some of the guys were on choppers. Some of us were on new Harleys, the Pan Americas. You know, we were up there in August.
Yeah, that was an adventure.
Yeah, it was the wettest August they had on record. And so it just, I'm from Southern California. If it's raining, we don't ride our motorcycle, you know?
Yeah.
And we were up there, and we got off the ferry first day, and I think it was like 4 a.m. and there's a tunnel in Whittier that you have to cross through, and 1 hour of the day the tunnel goes this way, and then the next hour it goes the reverse, and it just goes like that. So we got off the boat, and it was dumping rain, and right away everyone was soaked. I was soaked, all my gear was soaked, and we got to that tunnel and we just missed the cutoff. So now we had to just sit there for an hour and wait as everybody else came through the other way. And so that was just right away. I was like, okay, well, this is how the whole trip's going to be.
It's going to be a grind.
Yeah, it's going to be a grind. And that's what it was. And I think we had with the Chase rig, we had 12 people. So that into itself is a difficult thing. You know, you SEAL teams or SEAL Team 6, you know what I mean? There's 6 guys because that's what they figured out is a size that you can move efficiently, quickly, and not kill each other, probably, I imagine. You know, I don't know. I've never been on a SEAL team. But 12 guys is 2 SEALs teams, but and there's a lot of, you know, there's bickering, and there's and it just makes it a little more difficult, you know. Or you're if nothing else, you're just waiting. This guy moves at this pace. This guy moves at this pace. We're all on different kinds of motorcycles, you know. The slowest thing is the chase truck, you know. Are we going to have to go chase the chase truck? You know, was a big question every single day, and eventually we did have to go chase. I had to go chase the chase truck and go back to America and get a vehicle and come back and be the new chase truck. But yeah, that was difficult, just riding in the rain and stuff. When we got close with Arctic Circle, I think, so pretty far north. And yeah, man, we were on the Hall Road that you see on TV, and you know, some of that TV stuff is made up and made to look gnarlier than it is. The Hall Road is one of those things that they can't show you how gnarly it really is. You know, it's super scary. The truckers that are driving it, the big rigs they have up there, they're bigger than the rigs here. Like they're running super singles. They're a bigger truck. They're faster, and that road has got this heavy crown. It's a 2-lane road. It's really like a 1.25 lane road.
Right.
You know, like it's made for just one truck to go down the middle. So if you're not in that middle spot, you're just kind of slowly going off the side of the road, and there's riprap and rivers and and all this other stuff. And so we got real close to the top, and it was really raining really good. And one of us had a pretty good get off through that riprap, and Bill said, "Man, I don't think it's a good idea to keep going." And me and my buddy David, we were on those Pan Americas, so we were on a far more capable motorcycle than a lot of those guys on choppers for sure. My buddy David said, "Man, listen, we're like 150 miles to the top to Prudhoe," and he said, "I think I can make it," And he said, "Do you want to go?" And I said, "I think I can make it," And so we went, and it took us 6 hours to go 60 miles. It was super muddy. Those trucks would come. You just basically have to get out of their way because they ain't stopping and they're not slowing down. It's not like racing Baja, same thing, I was in one of those Sandy W's in Baja, and I heard a truck coming, and it was Riviera truck, dude, and he had caught me. And I was like, dude, I just got to move. This guy's not lifting.
Yeah.
He probably can't see me. It's not his fault.
No.
I got to park it in the cactus, and that's what I did, and just let him pass,
Yeah.
But same thing up there, man. You hear those big rigs coming, like just get out of their way. And we made it to Prudhoe Bay. We checked out the buffet in Prudhoe Bay. It's world renowned. We were up there with the roughnecks and the drillers and all that stuff, and we found one heavy equipment shop to squirt off our bikes. And that was a big problem with the Harleys, is these low radiators that would just pack up with mud. So probably every 40 or 50 miles, we'd find a river. We'd get a Camelback and squirt out the back of the radiator, and then get a little wire brush and scrape out the radiators because the bikes were just overheating. Even though it wasn't hot outside, that they just couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was difficult. And we came back down and met up with the posse and continued to ride down. And I don't know what my point was with that. What is that? You go ride some of that stuff that's difficult, and a lot of times getting ready for that trip and talking about the trip afterwards is very cool. Man, I'm proud to say I raced the Nora on a Sportster. Let me know if any of your listeners have done that.
Yeah.
They haven't, and I rode to the top of Prudhoe Bay, and again, listeners, chime in if you've done that. Probably some dudes have,
Yeah.
But talking about it is the win, doing it sometimes sucks. And for sure, racing the Nora was very difficult. You don't want to be the guy that lets down your teammate, that doesn't complete a section, that leaves the bike out in the desert, man, that stuff happens on new capable bikes.
Yeah.
100% it could happen on a dumb Sportster, and the same with the last guy. You don't want to be the guy that has to push the inReach button and get airlifted out, and ruins the trip, and everybody goes home sad, so when you go ride that kind of stuff, and then now I just go on a little weekend ride up to one of my swap meets or something, makes you appreciate it. You stop at the hotel, and there's gas every 50 miles, and it's not raining.
It's funny because there's a point of inflection where and it depends on who you are in the situation, where it goes from, hey, we're having a good time, and it's hard, right? But you're kind of embracing the suck. Yeah. And then it just gets really hard and really uncomfortable. And it was funny because when you guys were talking about that trip, the first thing that I thought of is it sounds really cool, but I'm it's going to be cold and it's going to be wet. And I've done enough of that in my life, right? I want to be dry and warm, right? But I was regardless, it's going to be cool, man. And then afterwards, you guys are telling me the story, and I'm ooh, man, that was a tough one. But you got to send it, or you're never going to have good experiences. You're just going to stay home and watch TV, right? Yeah.
I mean, you can sit on your couch and it'll be climate controlled, and you can get Pringles delivered, and you know what the weather will be like every single day, you know. But when you're at the bar in Old Town Temecula, does anybody want to hear that story? I don't. It doesn't sound that cool.
No.
So for us, that Alaska trip, the deal breaker, the thing that made it very difficult is that the apprehension, because it was during COVID, and so it kept getting pushed back.
Yeah.
Another year, I think. So you're planning, you're over planning, you're buying gear, you're changing the gear, you're guessing what the weather's supposed to be this. Well, now it's changed. The weather's supposed to be like that. We were very fortunate in that, man, it wasn't super cold really any of the nights. There were some chilly ones for sure, but it was more just the rain. When it's raining, it's usually it keeps the temperatures up.
Yeah.
But rain sucks to ride in, and
especially on a road that's not paved. I mean, you're dealing, and it's that weird, I don't know what, it's a DG, but it's black, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's kind of loamy, and it changes just like Baja, you know what I mean? It'll change in a heartbeat, and it'll get slick, real slick. If it gets shiny, slow down. Just like Baja, it's shiny. Why is it shiny? There's no water here. Yeah, because you're about to eat shit, you know? And so the same thing up there. You got to learn to kind of read the conditions. And we did there's a lot of street riding as well, but just like Baja, some of those streets are worse than the dirt.
Yeah.
So, and for sure those truckers, like, we got into an altercation with one, got caught a little construction thing, and he was pissed that we passed him, and they're not happy you're up there, and this trucker came out, and he was like 3 of yous stacked on top of each other in one of those trucks, and he comes yelling at me, "You passed me going 90. I go, "Dude, that's because you're going 80. And you're like spraying me, and it was like being squirted with a concrete hose, a concrete pump, just 3/4 inch pea gravel right at your face, muddy. And I go, I had to pass you. I couldn't ride behind you. And he's like, my truck's governed at 70. I go, you're bullshit, dude. Those trucks are so fast and so much power. You're going 80 at least, dude. And I went to pass him once, and I didn't make it, and I had to back off and do it again. And there's just a lot of apprehension and all that, because you don't know if you're going to make it to the end of the day. Even if you have an in reach, and that's what this truck driver told me. He's like, man, no one's coming for you up here, dude. Like, a helicopter might come tomorrow.
Yeah.
Really, realistically. He's like, people die up here all the time.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, I respect that position, and I appreciate you sharing that. I go, but one, I'm not turning around. Two, I didn't get here by making a wrong turn. I knew some of that going in, and three, we're this close, dude. We're going to make it, just so you know. And the same thing on that Nora race. When we raced Nora, day one, we line up with the 450s, dude. Those guys didn't even look at us, Day two, the same thing. They didn't even look at us. Day three, a couple guys, gave us one of those, Day four, they're, oh, you guys are doing all right. You might make it. And I said, what happened to your buddy back there on the new KTM? I seen him come home on the hay truck, just outside La Paz, Oh, well, wheel bearing. Oh, yeah. KTM on Sunday, ATM on Monday. And then on the last day of the race, we show up and they're like, oh, you guys are doing, I knew you'd do it. It's like, what the fuck you didn't know that, man. You guys were giving us the cold shoulder the whole time. I don't think you would have stopped to piss on us if we were on fire, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, is because like that race is known for the camaraderie, right? Because, it's multiple days of racing. You stop every night, have some beers, repair stuff if you need to repair stuff. But it's still a lot, long race, and, a lot of driving, a lot of riding. What was the reception like from the people, from the off-road racers?
Well, the organizers, you get a good reception.
Yeah.
Everyone else, I don't know. First off, I think Bill booked the hotels. Man, we stay in the ghetto every time, maybe because we got a large group.
Yeah.
But, nobody stayed where we stayed.
Yeah.
We're staying in the Loretto, in the ghetto, which there is a ghetto in Loretto.
Yeah, there is. I've stayed.
There's one in La Paz, San Felipe. Oh, we stay only at Kiki's, Shout out Kiki San Borja. If you ever go to San Felipe, you got to stay at San Borja. You got to stay at Kiki's. He owns both. Kiki's is like kind of the Motel 6, and then San Borja is kind of like the Hilton. So whatever you got the dollars for, that's the best place to go. Gate guarded, great people, friendliest staff you'll ever meet. But yeah, San Felipe, we high fluting it. And then on the way back up, we had our wives with us and our girlfriends, and we stayed at some nicer places. But yeah, we didn't get a warm reception from a lot of those guys, man. We got a little side eye, like, we'll be picking you guys up soon,
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. We had to go out there and prove ourselves to them, but we did, and we made it. And again, no one's done it since then.
See, for me, both as a racer and a fan, and especially as a promoter, like when somebody lines up with something that to me is ridiculous, I'm high-fiving them.
Yeah.
It's like, why would I be mad if some dude's going to sack up and go do it on a mini bike or on a Harley or, in a Miata? I'm like, go. Like, that's the piece of junk you got. Go for it, right?
Well, I totally get why these guys would give us the cold shoulder, because I felt like this afterward and watching other people race inappropriate things, which is, dude, you guys aren't going to make it. someone's going to get hurt. And then next year when we line up, there's going to be more rules, more regulations, more money to race, So I think a lot of those guys, if they're being honest, that's their worry. And I totally get it. When I felt like that when that kid showed up and raced the 1000 a couple of years ago from Australia, with no pit or no nothing like that. And he made it. And man, that kind of makes everybody think anybody can make it,
Sure.
This is an easy thing. Dude, it's not an easy thing. That guy, probably strong skills. He got a lot of pit support from people helping him, but there was a shitload of luck, and I guarantee you that guy would say that same thing. When some of these other people show up in the side-by-sides racing those things down there that never done any kind of Baja and they finish, they think, it's so easy. It's like, do it again then.
Yeah.
Do it again. Go faster and do it again.
No, you'll get it handed to you. I mean, it's interesting because I agree, but I also look at it like, who are you to, there's a proper way to do it and to be prepared and everything. But like, it's also like, what is the point? Are we trying to share this with people or are we trying to keep it this private little club? Right. And to me, I want more people to come and try it. And that's why I like the Biltwell 100 is like, there's I'd say the majority of your racers are guys who are like, man, I can't race the Mint, but now they've done the 100. They're like, okay.
No, you guys shouldn't race the Mint. That's a tough course, dude. Unless Matt changes the course, most of you guys do not belong at the Mint.
Well, come do a lap, right? Yeah, no, but that's how it is. It's like, you got to start somewhere. And like, if I think too, like we were talking about earlier is like, if you're starting a district race, like it's intimidating, you're like, where do I go? What do I do? Why is this guy scowling at me? Like there's a lot there. It's a big learning curve and you're racing against guys that are very proficient. It's like you guys have created something where it's like, it's okay to be a kook, right? And you're there to have a good time and race.
Yeah, man, I see all sides again. Our Bill 100 first year. Hey, everybody show up. We're going to put you in this starting gate and kind of have some classes, and then second year, I think like maybe Jordan Graham, who's a friend of mine, showed up, like in race tool again, but on Ducati. It's like, I think, or maybe it's your race, It's like, okay, we need to start working on the classes. We need to have some rules. So my point with, with the Australian guy is like, man, there's some rules. You don't have pits or you don't have pit support, like you don't get to race, and then they kind of made an exception and he finished. And so I think that makes people think, well, Baja's an easy thing and desert racing ain't no thing. I just, get a nice new bike and I'll win, and it's not like that. So as our race has progressed, for sure, we had to, figure out some rules, tighten some things up and work on the classes a bunch so that it's kind of, even though we claim, it's good times, not lap times. We're, as we've been working on the scoring and the tracking quite a bit in the last few years to make that better, but we don't claim to have every single lap time to the last second,
Sure.
That's if that stuff concerns you, you should go race a district race, you know, and those guys are serious. As you said, they're in the parking lot and they're butt chugging protein powder. And when they're done, they're slamming 805s and they're driving their white F-250 home, to Apple Valley. But, those guys are fast and they're serious, and at our race, man, you might show up in a Camry with a Joe Hauler, and an XR 100, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
So there's spaces for everybody. We tend to identify with that guy at the Camry and the Joe Hauler a little bit more than that guy with the white F-250.
Right.
That's just us.
How long have you been working with Biltwell?
It depends who you ask, 12, 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
I was friends with Bill and Magoo a little bit. I read magazines and they were in my town doing cool stuff. So I decided I was going to get close to these guys and hang out a little bit. I said it looked like from the magazine ads and stuff, it looked like they just party all the time. And I started to hang out and I realized all they did really was work. And they bought an office building in Temecula and they needed to build some offices and some bathrooms and stuff like that. And I was a contractor still at the time. So that was my first Biltwell job, as I built their offices, put in some steel stud partitions and a T-bar and a bathroom and a water heater. And I remember I put the water heater in the shop, and the code is you got to have the disconnect in plain line of sight, if there's a problem, so you can shut off the water heater. And we were done with the building final, and Bill came and told me, I want you to move the disconnect and put it on the other side. And I said, well, that means I got to call the plumber, the drywaller, the painter, the framer, about every other trade that's been on the job site to move this. He said, I don't care, that's what I want. And so I learned right away that's how Bill operates. So, but that was my first Biltwell job, and that was probably that was probably 15 years ago, and then I had a blog at the time, because back in the day, that's what you had. There was no Instagram. You had a blog. Right. And there wasn't even Facebook. And that's when Facebook came out, and Bill said, oh, you got a blog. You could probably figure out Facebook, So I started to help them with Facebook. And he said, oh, you go to the swap meet already. Maybe you can go to the swap meet for us, And then he said, oh, you can ride a motorcycle. Maybe you can go do some of our events, go do some of the rides, whatever. And help me out with the motorcycle, and I just started doing little stuff, and I wanted to get out of construction, because that was the 2006, 7, 8 era ish, and construction was harder than it usually is. It's always hard, but when things are rough, it goes to low bid sub. When things are good, man, you show up on a job site, there's a guy that looks like you, and he's a mean old man, but he can tell you, hey, this is how you snap a line, this is how you do layout, let me show you why, and when times are tough, it's low bid sub, and that guy tells you, hey, can you show me how to snap a line? It's like, man, I'm not the smartest guy in the job. If I'm the smartest guy in the job, we're in trouble. Yeah. So that made construction considerably harder. So I would always be grateful for Bill and Magoo giving me the opportunity to get out of construction. I have a construction sobriety date, and I hold it near and dear to my heart, Yeah. But yeah, that was 15, 16 years ago, and I just started trying to always do more and more with them, and
you became kind of like the de facto events guy, right? The good time guy. Like, is that your favorite part about this? What is your favorite part about working with Biltwell?
Yeah, I've been pro party most of my life. State of California has mandated that I don't party anymore, actually, because I've done it at a high level. What I thought was a high level, State of California would tell you differently. But yeah, now I've become, put on a party guy. And Bill and Magoo know how to party too, and they know how to work hard. And you combine those two things, and that's what's made for great, fun events. And a lot like you, I think, what you guys do over here. We do the same thing. We'll go to some event and we'll say, why do you do it like this? Why do you do it like that? Why do you do it like this? Why are you posturing? This isn't fun, and
sure.
I know Bill's experience and Magoo's experience was they went to, they went to bike nights and Laughlin runs and said, man, there's not a lot of fun here. There's not a lot of riding. Let's strip it down. The best stuff is the ride, and then the next best thing is after the ride, talking to your buddies about, how hard it was to make it up the toll road, the haul road, is talking about it, so let's give them a place to do that. And, let's strip it down. Let's not make it $1 million, and, let's bring some beer and invite people from all walks, not, you got to have a Harley, you got to have, yeah, all right, man, whatever you got, ride it up. Can you ride it? Let's go, and so, now, like our Kernville campout, this year will be 10 years of doing that, and we have 1,300 people over there. And again, it doesn't matter what you ride. It's primarily Harleys, yeah, but it's people from all over California, Nevada, Arizona. They come out to our little event up on the Kern River, and they show up on Friday. They burn it down Friday night. They burn it down Saturday night, and they go home. And they don't spend a bunch of money with us. They buy a ticket. It's not super cheap, but it's not super expensive, and they enjoy some of the local restaurants and breweries and all that, and have a good time. And it's kind of, it's the tastemakers. It's the guys that actually ride motorcycles. It's a little bit higher barrier to entry to actually ride your motorcycle. Riding motorcycles are scary. That's what makes them fun, but we do these events where you have to ride. We just did the El Diablo run. It's like you're not showing up with your bike on a trailer, probably. I mean, you could, but it's
looked down upon.
It's looked down upon. Yeah. We want you to ride there, get a story, run out of gas, get a sunburn, hit a topa, have some kind of experience and then talk about it with your buddies for 2 or 3 days and then ride home and do the same thing.
Right.
So that you go home with a story.
And Diablo Run is from here down to San Felipe?
Yeah. Every other year. Next year, I think we will do it next year, which we shouldn't, but it'll be the last one, I think Bill has decided. So it'll be 20 years of doing it on and off. There's been a couple of years we missed and COVID or other stuff, or we do it every other year. So it's not 20 of them, but 20 years it's been going on, just like Biltwell's been around for 20 years.
Nice.
So yeah, we encourage people to ride their motorcycles. It's a little bit different. I think a lot of people are in love with the idea of having a motorcycle and, putting it in a nice man cave like this, and talking about it and working on it. And if you have a family, you probably have less time to ride it. So you're doing, scratch that itch. You are working on it and you're buying stuff and you're customizing it and making it yours, you know what I mean? But some of us like to ride them. I like to ride them. I can cross thread some things and I'm a bolticator, I can put together some stuff, but I wouldn't call myself a builder, but I love to ride them. And I only do that other stuff so that I can go on some kind of trip, and go on some kind of good ride, and I don't want to commute on it. I don't need to log 1 million miles a year. I just want to log some quality ones. I want to do Baja stuff, NorCal, Idaho, all that good stuff that only some of that stuff you can only get to access, via motorcycle. Some of those places you're talking about in Baja, man, you need off-road truck or a bike, dirt bike, or you're never going to see that stuff, and Baja's a special place, but it's more special when you get, the farther out you get, you're in that little swath of land from San Ignacio to Scorpion Bay, dude, man, there's nothing out there. There's these giant, though, canyons that look like the Grand Canyon, and there's like 5 of them, and they're beautiful, but you'll never see them in a Toyota Corolla or, maybe not even an F-250. You gotta be out there in some kind of off-road vehicle.
That's the kind of common thread is like both with, motorcycles with choppers. It's like, what is the point? The point is the journey, right? And going to some place that's not, the highway. The highway is designed for everybody else, right? And that's one of the things I learned about being an off-roader is like the goal is to go to some place where your cell phone doesn't work, and do it with your friends and have a good time. It's the journey, the process of doing that, not necessarily even just the destination, but, that whole experience.
Yeah. And some people would argue with the cell phone that's harder to do because you're never off grid really. And you can, the weather conditions and, you know what's going to be open. You can make a reservation, but you can always do it on a tougher bike. You can always do it on, with less of a bike. You can ride a chopper or, on our silly race, guys ride those little Coleman bikes, they do 25 miles. Like that's arguably the toughest dude out there. Forget about the guy in the 450 that's clocked some crazy fast lap times. Man, this guy rode this Coleman 25 miles with no suspension and just getting everybody spraying them with dirt, and
yeah, but he had fun.
He had fun, so you can always, you can still do some of that stuff even with the cell phone, figure out a way to make it tough, to make it challenging, to make it different. Maybe you heard about a crazy spot because of the cell phone actually, that you would have never heard about, back in the day, man, I would have never heard about Metallica except I had a cousin with long hair that smoked weed and he'd said, hey man, to hell with Iron Maiden. They're pussies. You got to listen to Metallica, Now you just know, like, you got the phone, like, this is the hot band you got to listen to. About these things. But the good thing about the phone is, yeah, man, it might show you some of those desert canyons between San Ignacio and Scorpion Bay, and you might see one of those and say, man, I'm going to take a trip. That sounds pretty cool, Yeah. And that stuff's still tough, even with dumb phone and Starlink and all that, man. Go to Baja. You will 100% leave with a story.
Yeah. No, there's a million adventures to have down there, especially on a bike, because a bike is arguably the best way to access some of the more remote spots,
Yeah. And they respect you on a bike down there too, because the locals, they know how tough it is down there on a bike, and they give you that respect, and that's pretty cool, and you have that camaraderie, even though those guys might not own a motorcycle. They probably don't, a lot of them. They respect you. I got to tell you, man, I've done a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of crazy partying, drugs and alcohol and drinking and driving. And I had some threesomes. Some of them were with girls even, But, man, nothing was cooler than coming around a corner in Baja racing on the Nora, you know, and having a couple of drunk locals standing on the roof of their Ford Ranger at 8 a.m, drinking Tecate, cheering you on, like, go, you know, like you're at that point, man, you're Ricky Johnson, you know, you're doing it, you know, and you look down, only going 28 miles an hour, I think, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but at that point, you're like, these guys think I'm somebody. You know what I mean?
Dude, the Baja locals are into it. I mean, it's funny because, like, I remember seeing a statistic that, like, not in the rest of Mexico, but in Baja, you know, off-road racing is like bigger than soccer, you know, and it's true, you know, and it's all up and down that peninsula, and it's cool to see, you know, and I've been doing this long enough to where I've seen generations of people. In fact, there was a kid that I met while we were filming, I think we were filming the Baja 500, and Vinny, our director of photography, who actually just recently passed, he almost got hit by a truck, and we were standing in a corner in a spot we probably shouldn't have been standing, and he got this amazing photo with wheels popping up and everything, and this kid took a photo of Vinny almost getting hit, and you could see how close the truck was. And years later, I think it was 10 years later, that kid was an engineer at Fox Racing, and he told me that story, and he's like, hey, do you remember that? And I'm like, yeah, I totally remember it. He goes, you gave me stickers. I gave you a photo of Vinny almost getting killed. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, not that Vinny almost got killed, but that kid remembered that moment. So it's cool to see the generations of, you know, of fans and racers and stuff, you know, come up, and they're super enthusiastic about off-road racing down there, which is cool.
Yeah, man, I think that is the good thing about this little misery machine, is that it gives those kids, they have a better opportunity to be that guy at Fox, you know. And to me, I mean, what more of a powerful story could you tell than that one? You know, we're hoping when we go down there with the El Diablo run, same thing. We've been supporting an orphanage in San Felipe for a few years, and on the Sunday morning of when everybody's going home, usually in El Diablo, we visit this orphanage, the Sunrise Hacienda Orphanage, and we go down there and we take the kids for rides on the bikes, choppers, adventure bikes, whatever, you know. And they're in that area, Manitas or whatever. It's the section that I rode out of. You know, when you leave town, it's in the dump. You know, you're riding through all these trash piles and fishing nets and all this stuff, you know, and that's where the orphanage is. It's in the beginning of the whoops.
Yeah, right there at Zoo Road.
Yeah, right there, and it's just the beginning of the just hell, you know, and that's where these kids are, these poor little kids, and we're hoping, you know, that between them listening to the off-road bikes going by during the races and us coming by and taking them for rides, you know, that maybe we can ruin a couple of their lives and they'll want to be racers or off-road engineers at Fox, you know, something motorsports related. You know, we're hoping we could just plant that seed like it was planted in a lot of us. You know, for me, it was my dad taking me to Pomona, to the drag strip and to the swap meet, you know, over and over and over as a kid, and watching, you know, Eddie and Ursi Hill and all the privateers do their thing, you know, or for you, probably some off-road racing that you got drug out to. And if we could just, you know, if we could ruin one kid's life, we'll have succeeded.
Well, it is. You know? It's funny. It's like we talk about those influences. And for me and my brother, it was always like, you know, when in our early life, you know, we were living in Michigan and we're watching Wide World of Sports going, man, that is so cool. You know, maybe someday, you know, and then we end up moving to El Cajon, and the kids in El Cajon were just, you know how kids are. They're just like, why are you riding a BMX bike, kid? You know what I mean? Like, they're just ruthless. They're like, you need a motorcycle. And that was the era of three-wheelers, right? We were straight running ourselves over, you know, and, you know, doing everything wrong, like riding on three-wheelers with flip-flops and shorts and no helmets and just, you know, getting sucked under the wheel and, you know, dealing with all that. But, you know, it's just one of those things that, like, it definitely has influence on you as a kid, you know, and shapes who you are as an adult. You know, all those experiences and influences. So yeah, I think it's very possible that things that we do down, you know, with the kids in Baja and up here, like, they see it and they're like, that's pretty cool. I want to do that.
Yeah. And man, now a lot of locals down there, like, they're the winning, like, they got the experience.
Yeah.
They have the cars that are the most sussed. You know, like they're down there winning. So it's us going down there now. Kind of they're stoking us out and showing us the way.
Yeah.
You know, the tide has kind of turned. But yes,
that's been really cool in off-road racing. In our side, it's been like, you know, the Vidolslas, the Ampudias, right? And, Abdali Lopez, like there was a long time where it wasn't locals. And then, you know, really the Vidolslas broke that and became, you know, the first people, from Baja to win and can win again. And now, you know, with the Ampudias, it's like you got to beat them, you know what I mean? So it's cool to see that, you know?
Yeah, they've got for them the hardest part was to figure out the bikes and the race support, but now they have the knowledge, they have the bikes, they got the skills.
Yeah.
I mean, if you grow up racing the whoops and the trash dumps of San Felipe, like you're going to be fast or you're going to be dead.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be anywhere in the middle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because by necessity, if you can just ride your bike through that stuff, dude, you're going to be all right. You know, the whoops and the turns, you know, everything's like this. And, you know, the 250 dudes die every single year out there. You know, it's one of the most brutal races. That was like my real first off-road races, going out to the 250 and just seeing dudes get hammered out there. And that section of the desert is so chewed up. They never quit pre-running. They never quit racing right there. They don't ever get any rain. You know, it's brutal right there. So if you can go ride that stuff every single day with no helmet, usually, and not die, dude, you're going to be a champion. You're going to be up on the box, and those guys are up on the box, you know, and it's pretty cool. And as you said, now it's kind of on us gringos. We got to step up our game if we think we're going to go down there and win.
Well, so what's next for you with Biltwell? I know actually we should talk about how many episodes of Fool's Gold are you in? You just launched that.
Yeah, I think we're 16 episodes in.
Nice.
My friend Ed Subius and I, shout out Ed Subius. Ed's a true motorcycle enthusiast, and like me, he's born and raised in Southern California, and he's been influenced by all this stuff our whole life. You know, so, and he's a BMX guy, he's a skateboard guy, worked for magazines, been in both industries, skateboard, BMX, all that motorcycle stuff his whole life. You know, that's really all he knows. Southern California, he's Hispanic, so he grew up LA, lowriders, all that good stuff. Him and I were just reflecting on all the talented people we've met and all the cool stuff we got to do, you know, in our life. And we said, man, we should actually, I was with Pam Zam, maybe it was working on I want to do something about the swap meets, and it kind of just morphed into, it started off, it was going to be some kind of cheesy show where some made up wrench throwing, you know, bullshit.
Yeah, reality show.
Yeah, reality show. It started to go down that way. I said, man, this is not what I'm trying to do. You know, what am I trying to do? What are we trying to do? What we're trying to do is highlight some of the talented guys and girls that we've met, you know, through the years that are building stuff, racing stuff, you know, talented musicians, artists, you know. So with the Fool's Gold stuff is, we're just trying to, you know, shine a light on some of these people, builders, chopper guys, swap meet junkies, you know, cool musicians, people that are just a little counterculture, but in it, you know, and doing it at a high level, you know. So I think episode 1 or 2, my buddy Ryan Grossman, he's kind of the king of the swap meets, man, picking and flipping. And he has a shop up in Martinez, California. Man, they build one bike a week.
Wow.
You know, one bike a week. His shop, it turns out, a bitchin' chopper knucklehead, and he raffles a lot of them off. So he's turning out crazy amount of bikes, you know. So he's constantly on the hunt. You know, it'll be his tagline is "You gotta want it," you know. And he'll be on an airplane at 3 a.m. You see him, he's posting on Instagram, and then he'll rent whatever they got to rent. Sometimes like a Camry. You know what I mean? He would like to get a van. They got a Camry. So he goes to get this bike out in Iowa, you know, take it apart. There's things hanging out of the windows. The trunk's bungee corded down. And then he'll drive it back to California as fast as he can. And he's got a couple mechanics and a couple buddies, and they'll build a bike out of this thing and bring it back to its glory, you know, and then he'll sell it or raffle it. And so just stuff like that. It's a very cool story. I started with the idea where we're going to have to, you know, create all this drama and all that. And then I realized I don't have to create it. These guys are doing it. You know what I mean? He's got 3 flat tires, 2 tickets for going over 100 miles an hour, you know, almost resulting in an arrest. He's been up for 36 hours, and in a week he's put back together this bike. And a lot of times the bike, comes with, dude, the folders of all the pictures, the guy's jacket, his cut maybe, his old ladies there telling the stories, and she's saying, man, I know where, more of the bike is down the street. I only have the gas tank and the frame. I know where the motor is. We can get it. You got to hang out a little more, and Ryan's, hanging out. I don't know if you know old bike guys, but like, it's not like you knock on the door 9 to 5 and, they make a nice deal with you. It takes a special guy to hold on to a hunk of junk Harley Davidson motorcycle for 50 plus years.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's probably a couple sandwiches short of a picnic basket.
Right.
So there's a lot of hoops to hop through. It's not for everybody. It's not buy it now. Here's the money.
Yeah, it's not Etsy.
Yeah, dude, it's not Etsy, man. It's like my cousin's got the title, but he's in jail. I can get it if you can push me through the window, and so Ryan was like one of the first guys we did, and it was one of the greater episodes, and then like the next one, same thing. My buddy Al, he's in San Bernardino, man. That's Chopper. That's where they came from. A lot of them, they came from NorCal or SoCal,
Yeah.
and just like skateboarding and BMX, why do they come from these areas? Because we got 365 days of bitching riding. Or bitching, whatever, so if you build a motorcycle, like, you're riding it every day. Whatever falls off, you probably don't have time to put it back on. You just decide, I don't need that.
Right.
I don't need that. That's how choppers got to be things. They came from Harley and they had bags and windshields and fenders, and you change a tire a couple times and you're like, man, I'm not putting back on the fender, dude. It's just going to come off again next time. And it never rains here, so I don't need that front fender anyway. Choppers. And then you mix in a little bit of meth and alcohol, and we could cut that
bad
back.
Ideas.
Yeah, bad ideas, late nights, we could, what if it was like this instead of like this? I could probably go a little faster, it's like racing a dirt bike, that little relaxed head angle. That's what made the 650R king of the desert, Choppers are the same thing. So anyway, I figured out real quickly, I don't need to make up any of this drama. These guys are living a crazy life anyway. I might take it for granted because I'm in it all the time. I'm a swap meet junkie too, and I will go chase some parts, on my day off. But these guys will do it. They don't have a day off, they'll do it 24/7, So I realized I don't need to make nothing up. Ed, who's been shooting a lot of these guys and friends with them for a long time, man, when Ed shows up, he's a motorcycle guy. They don't feel uncomfortable in front of Ed. They already know Ed. They've seen him around for 20 years now. So it's like, it's not, right now I'm uncomfortable. You got all these red dot things pointed at me and I've never been in this garage, and it's a little weird. We show up with Ed at these guys' houses and they got their families and their buddies there. And it's like, Ed's a fly on the wall. You don't even know he's there. You know what I mean? And so we get good stuff out of them, I think, and we get to tell their story, and it's not too corny, because it doesn't need to be too corny. These guys are doing it for the right reasons. A lot of them aren't making money. Some of them are making real money, but they do it because they love it. They need that hit.
Well, right away, like, I looked at it and I was stoked because it's authentic, right? And I mean, you guys have always done things authentically. It's not like you're not trying to shape it into something that's fake or whatever. And I think that's become more and more valuable. People don't want to be bullshitted anymore. They want the real,
Yeah.
And, it's an interesting space for you guys to be in right now, because most of the magazines that used to cover this culture have failed, right? And a lot of them didn't evolve either, right? They stayed the kind of same 70s vibe that they were, created in. And it's been interesting to watch. I guess I would call it chopper culture, bike culture, because me growing up as a kid, and especially being from Michigan, like, it was all Harleys. And then, the last couple of eras has mixed domestic and foreign bikes together, and everybody's been okay with it, which in the past was like, hey, Hondas aren't cool, right? Yeah. And I think too, like, looping back around, that's what I thought was cool about the Biltwell 100 is like, it was a further evolution of that, of that recognition, right? Of like, hey, this isn't, you only can ride a Harley, there's other platforms, and even modifying those other platforms is pretty cool. But there's so many cool stories out there to be told within the culture. I'm glad you're doing Fool's Gold. I think it's like one of these things that, like, it's back to the roots of like, I always use skateboarding as a parallel. It's like, dude, when Fausto and those guys started Thrasher magazine, there was no business plan.
Yeah.
There's no thought that like, hey, someday it'll morph into this huge empire. It was like, maybe we can make enough money so that we don't have to have a job. Right.
Yeah.
And it became the empire that it became. Right. And then it became valuable to, everybody else. Right. And so it's weird now to see the cycle where you guys are doing a good job of presenting the current state of the culture. I think it's important.
Yeah. Well, those guys a lot of them are so immersed in it, and they're probably not concerned with telling their story. I feel like it's a shame though, if we don't tell some of those guys' stories, because there's just so many cool stories to be told, that if you just saw this guy and you just saw his bike, I've seen a chopper before.
Right.
Yeah. Do you know where this bike came from? Do you know the story on the parts?
Sure.
Do you know how long this guy's been awake trying to finish this thing, and then ride it somewhere crazy, It's like, okay, now I think you got a few more people's attention, And so we just like to shine a light on those people. I feel guilty walking by somebody at the swap meet that obviously a character and has some stories to tell, you know what I mean? That again, I just take for granted. I've been yelling at this guy for 10 years to, learn how to park but the truth is he's an OG that's been in this stuff a lot longer than I've been alive.
Right.
I like to hear some of their stories. And I think unfortunately with this thing, we get so caught up, we don't ever have time to do that anymore. Or if we do, it's only in 5-second clips,
Yeah.
one flick of their thing and it's gone. What used to be cool, magazines, like you said, man, you put that thing on the toilet and you read it for freaking years, man.
Totally.
Go to a motorcycle shop. They got stacks of magazines still on the toilet. What's taking so long? I'm not on my phone. I'm looking through the magazines, and
yeah.
They used to be good magazines. And yeah, Thrasher, always one of my favorites, you know, and Thrasher is the example I use though often when I say, man, here's old guys that adapted and their content is like this. They have so many channels, and it's all so good, And so it wasn't old guys just taking the money and running, They said, we're going to put it back in there, man. We're going to put it back in. The kids are coming for you whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Kids are coming for you, old man. They're coming for me, and they're coming for you.
Yep.
So embrace it or get out of the way, And man, Thrasher's done a great job at embracing it, and putting out all this crazy content that the kids are filming all day long with this thing. That's the good thing about this, a little content creating machine. And, I'm just trying to snag a little bit of that, of the motorcycle and hot rod culture that I grew up in Southern California that I've kind of just taken for granted. I grew up in Elsinore in the 80s, and my parents had rental houses, and who rented houses in the 80s? The same guys that rent in Elsinore?
Yeah.
The same guys that rent them now.
Yeah.
Man, it was club guys and lowriders, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Not great guys. And my dad would go over there and we'd go to collect the rent. And sometimes it was tents, and sometimes we'd go there and the SWAT team was there, and sometimes we'd go there and everyone had cleaned out and the SWAT team had just been there and everything was broke down and the house was trashed, you know what I mean? But sometimes we'd go there and some of the bikers that my parents would rent to, man, they had cool stories, They had cool bikes and they had one of the guys, one of our renters bought my mom's Super Beetle, arguably the ugliest Volkswagen ever made. And a week later, he showed back up to pay the rent. And it was like cow look, shaved everything, baby blue, Ken would pull out, you know what I mean? He was cooking crank for the Hells Angels. So that's where he got his money. But it was like, that's, when I was a kid growing up, I'm like, man, that's freaking cool. And this guy had these shiny bikes and I didn't know at the time what they were, but they're pan heads and shovel heads and they were choppers, and I'm like, man, that was cool. And my dad had choppers too. And my dad had some cars, some Chevys, and again, I just kind of took it for granted, like this thing doesn't really run, or why do we drag this around from every house we're ever at, Dad, and now I know why. You can't get rid of that. You ain't never getting another one.
Yeah. It's funny how you reflect on stuff like that now, it's, you become your parents or your grandfather or whatever, who's like got all this stuff in a garage that, he'll never get rid of. Right. And, that's your values change and you start seeing like, okay, they're not making any more of these. I need to hold on to this. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that, stylistically, like there's a lot of value in that,
Yeah, now I'm grateful for all that stuff. You know, when I was a kid, I was kind of like, why don't we have anything new? Why do we got Volkswagen buses? Like, those are nerd mobiles. Dude, I would give anything to be able to afford a Volkswagen bus now.
Dude,
you know
I was,
what I mean? That's my dream car. That's my.
I was just up at, actually, I don't know if you know Vipe.
I know Vipe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just up at Vipe's event in Huntington, which mixes, you know, a little bit of off-road, overland culture with surf culture. Right. And it was a cool event. And, but they, you know, they had all the new overland machines, which they're cool. Like, there's some bitchin' stuff, but he had a crew there of microbuses, and boy, there were some microbuses there that were like beyond perfect. I was blown away. I was like, man, it's not just the money, it's like the time and the effort to make everything perfect in it. And they're bitching. They're badass.
Yeah, they still stole the show, I bet.
Yeah. It's style. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, people aren't making, you know, vehicles anymore that have that level of craftsmanship and style and longevity, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I have a 67 Jeep, right? One of the old military Jeeps. And like, I'll never get rid of that thing. It goes 30 miles an hour. That's all it needs to do, man.
Yeah.
Like, I put surfboards on it, go to the beach. That's it. People are always like, you should put a V8 in it. And I'm like, why? Yeah. It's got a inline 4. It's perfect, you know?
And it's going to outlive you and outlive your
already
kids.
has. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And these new cars are out in the parking lot out there, man. They got 10-year shelf life.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
Yep.
You know, or Elon shuts them down with, you know, push of the button, you know. But, no, all that stuff is cool. And it comes with the good thing about getting older is that you appreciate that. You know, when you're in it, you're young, you know, you might be annoyed or whatever, man. I remember riding in my parents' Volkswagens. I'm like, dude, it's freaking hot in here.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going anywhere fast. You know? It'd be 110 inside. It's only 90 outside. Yeah. Why is it so hot in here, Dad?
Yeah.
It was air-cooled freaking bread box that goes 48 miles an hour, man. Yeah. Shut up and sit down.
It's a weird thing to think about, too, especially as it relates to Southern California spawning all these cultures, right? So, like, we have perfect weather pretty much year-round, right? And, yeah, we have highways that interconnect everything. But when you think about, like, you know, like, because here, I'm here living in Oceanside, and we have a big lowrider culture, and I fucking love it. I mean, it's one of those things where they probably think I'm the most annoying white dude, because when I see him, I walk over, I look at him, I start talking to him like, hey, why'd you do this? Or, you know, admiring what they're doing, because I'm like, there's, I don't know, 10,000 hours into that car.
Yeah. Think about it, 10,000 hours.
You know what I mean?
Bananas.
But just because they like that, right? It doesn't go faster. It's not more fuel efficient. Yeah. At the end of the day, he's not going to sell it for more money that he put into it. You know what I mean?
Definitely get that money back.
Best case scenario is he passes it on to his son. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just funny. And that is a subset of hot rod culture, which, you know, was spawned from Southern California, and off-roading is part of that. Right. And it was funny because there was one of the old timers I was talking to about why Southern California is such a hotbed. And I'd never thought about this, because I was like, oh, it's the weather. And he goes, no, man, it's the aerospace industry.
Yeah.
And I was like,
surfing, all that. What
do you mean? He's like, well, we have the aerospace industry here. And so you have all these really intelligent people that have this skill set, and they get bored and they make hot rods, they make low riders, they make off-road race vehicles, they make surfboards, all this stuff. And it spawned out from Southern California. So it's cool. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to have a little hand in like proliferating it and sharing it. And, I'm glad you guys are doing the same thing.
Yeah. You know what? It beats construction, man.
It definitely beats construction. Amen. Thanks for doing this, brother. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.